Okay, thank you so much for having all of us. I'm really pleased to be here. And so we'll kick it off with just an overview of what we'll be talking about today. So next slide. So we'll start off. You had some brief introduction, so well, we can probably skip over a little bit of that, but to give some context of our program here at New York City DOT, then talking a little bit about how we utilize policy to kind of frame the work that we're doing. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation where we'll go through a number of these programs and what we're up to and how these might be of relevance to the work happening in North Jersey. And as noted before, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers after the presentation. Next slide. So going on to our introductions of our unit, our freight mobility unit falls within the transportation planning and regional planning group at New York City DOT. We are focused primarily on goods delivery, starting off first, looking at truck movement, since that's pretty much the bulk of how freight moves in New York City. But also, as you'll be hearing, we've been really thinking more broadly as we start to see more mode shift. And really thinking about how do we mitigate the adverse impacts of freight movement while also respecting and understanding that goods movement and freight movement are kind of integral parts of our transportation system and our economy. So next slide. So this is who you'll be hearing from today. We all work together within the unit. There's more of us. We are a pretty large unit, but we are a selection from within the freight mobility unit, and we hope to be able to share projects and work that we're doing that hopefully will be of relevance to all of you. Next. So getting into freight in the city or freight in New York City to be specific, but I think our urban freight conditions are applicable to other areas as well. And really looking at, we've come to do this work because we have, such a increase in e-commerce. So this is something we're all facing. And, as we see more packages being delivered to homes, we're also seeing larger truck traffic especially in New York City, where our streets are very constrained in terms of like we can't build more streets or widen our streets easily. And so it really creates these challenges of movement. And then furthermore, we're seeing trucks moving into residential areas and areas where they haven't typically been. Regularly in the past. And so this is causing a lot of challenges from safety to noise to air pollution that we have been trying to think creatively as a team about how to mitigate. And we're looking at both this from an environmental justice angle as well as thinking about efficiency and how to make this better and safer for the delivery workers themselves. Next slide. And here are some examples of what we're seeing on the street. So even when companies are trying to address some of these challenges by sort of moving to a walker model, there's currently not a lot of safe spaces for folks to sort of do that transloading from truck to a hand cart. And so a lot of this is happening in our streets in very unsafe conditions. We're seeing a lot of double parking as we see more trucks and vans trying to make residential deliveries, thanks to e-commerce. And then, if these trucks and vans are having trouble accessing the curb to be able to park and unload, and they're not they don't want to double park, which is, ostensibly not legal. We're seeing again more congestion in the streets. And that's contributing to air quality issues and all of those things above. So we've got our work cut out for us. Next slide. And so to really address this, we started off a few years ago putting together our first comprehensive freight plan for New York City, and and then kind of building out a visioning document from that to really think holistically about how we are going to deal with these trends over time and ground our various pilots in a policy document that will help us, move forward. And so we've really all of the work that we've been doing has been work that was thought of and is now being implemented from these planning documents. And then while doing this, also coordinating with our colleagues with the New York City Streets Plan, the Curb Management Action Plan. So making sure that what we're doing integrates with what the rest of our agency is doing and really looking for those alignments. Similarly, looking beyond our agency, working with our Department of City Planning, there was recently a large zoning text amendment, which it actually allowed for things like microhubs to be situated in commercial areas where they wouldn't have been allowed in the past. And so that's really we've been able to work with our sister agencies to think think about these sort of emerging freight needs and these solutions that we're trying to pilot in the city and see how we can create the regulatory environment to allow these things to be tested, implemented, and hopefully start to shift our environment over time on some of the negative externalities we're seeing. And then we have some ongoing places to maintain communication, our Freight Advisory Committee, thematic working groups, such as our Vision Zero safety working groups, and other opportunities for public outreach. And then finally, utilizing our traffic rules as a space to kind of create the legal framework for our pilots so that um, we're able to like have these temporary testing and like within the right of way of these novel ideas. Next slide. And so just this is a broad overview of the work that we're doing in our toolbox, so to speak, to address a lot of the challenges that we're facing and that I'm sure many of you are facing as well. Um, and what we'll be talking about and getting into detail here is some of these kind of key buckets from mode shift to freight consolidation to supporting curb access and finally to kind of creating and enforcing and supporting a culture of overall safety. Next slide. So with that, I will pass it off to my colleague, Carrie, who can kick off our discussion of cargo bikes and mode shift.
Thanks, Catherine, for the introduction and the context. I'm going to try and keep this fairly high level, and you can always ask me questions to get more into the specifics. Our entire toolbox includes overlapping strategies and impacts, like Catherine was getting into, but I'm going to focus on shift strategies, specifically with the cargo bike program and the Blue Highways program. I'll start with what is a cargo bike. I know this group probably knows, but in New York City, we have a specific definition, and that includes that it is an electric pedal assist bike that delivers commercial goods and has a large built-in cargo compartment. Um, some examples are they can be used to deliver business to business, like a bakery to a restaurant, or small business to clients, like a laundromat dropping off at residential buildings, or last mile parcel deliveries, where the final mile is shifted to cargo bikes, and it's coming from something like a warehouse going to a residence or a business, and it's probably been delivered to that warehouse via a different mode. So we see cargo bikes as a tool to move trucks and vans off the road, and that will reduce congestion, reduce double parking and emissions, increase curb space, and improve air quality. Could you go to the next slide? The cargo bike program launched in 2019, and it was successful enough that we decided to pursue it as a permanent program. We did that in 2024 through regulatory changes, which allowed cargo bikes on New York City streets officially. The program continues to grow. As you can see, we have about 800 cargo bikes operating in New York City that we know of. Um, And that means thousands of workers delivering packages and groceries in New York City. And in order to encourage the safe expansion of cargo bike usage, our next steps are to support through infrastructure updates and then safety education campaigns, which I will get into on the next slide. So, cargo bike corrals are dedicated areas for loading and unloading cargo bikes. Here you can see a few images of our corrals that are located in Manhattan. As of now, the process is request-based, but we are moving to a network approach and we're starting that move in downtown Brooklyn since it's a high-use area for cargo bikes. We will be making data-informed decisions rather than using the request-based system to create multiple locations in, like I said before, a network fashion um, for the designated cargo bike loading and unloading areas. And then let's go to the next slide. Another tool for promoting the safe expansion of cargo bike uses is a training guide for the cargo bike companies. This is actually going to be published next week, which is exciting. This guide is very comprehensive. It's informed by multiple case studies. We interviewed a lot of different municipalities. We had a lot of internal discussions, specifically about interacting with other road users. Um, we used we did informational interviews with the cargo bike companies that already exist and have expertise in various things like training, workforce development, battery charging. And with that, we got a guide that kind of covers what you see here in the table of contents. So, like I said, very comprehensive. We plan to follow this up with a safety brochure for cyclists, which will cover similar topics, but will be a little more succinct and more in like a pamphlet or brochure style. So it's something that that the cyclists can reference after the training to remind them of the training they already went through. And let's move along to Blue Highways. So, Blue Highways program is also a mode shift program. We're partnering with EDC on it. We want to move the middle mile off of trucks, the freight middle mile off of trucks and to the water. And once again, we're trying to reduce truck congestion, improve local air quality, and hopefully, in a longer term world where we're maybe electrifying vessels, we're talking about reducing carbon emissions as well. Um, so we can create sea shipping routes for freight movement in New York Harbor. And a couple of ways the program is doing this is through activating waterfront landings to receive freight and testing the model through creating pilot routes. One of the models that we're testing in the near term is moving freight on ferries and using micromobility like cargo bikes for the last mile. Similar to the cargo bikes program, we see this program replacing trucks and vans. And you can go ahead to the next one. So this is just an exciting announcement. We published the Blue Highways Action Plan in October 2025. This is a roadmap for how Blue Highways will be implemented. I'll drop in the chat later a link to the action plan. But this kind of shows you what we get into. We define the service lines, one of those service lines being the micro freight model that I just mentioned. We identify sites, so just the locations what we're going to be focusing in on for the program, and then we prioritize the near-term activations by, planning construction on certain waterfront landings and we also, based on all of that new activity, need to connect to the landside infrastructure. So, um, we're doing some amount of like upgrades on the bike lanes or using micro hubs to organize the freight on the land side. And I think just you can move along to my final slide. So as I noted before, pilots are sort of the next step in the program. Um, we're testing the model out. Here's a list of the peers that are available. Those are the ones that are readily available are in orange because as a NYC DOT ferry landing, we're also investigating the idea of the other ferry landings. And for this group here, I'd love to hear from you about where there might be Jersey landings available, or if you do some amount of updates. I just want to connect on the Jersey side. I think that this is the Blue Highways is going to do the most impact if this is a regional program rather than just a New York City program. And exciting, other exciting news, so many exciting pieces of news. Um, we have a new pilot route transporting goods daily from Red Hook Pier 11 to Manhattan's West Side Pier 79. So I don't know, can you see my, maybe not, cursor? Well, it's from Brooklyn to all the way around to the west side, and then the goods are being moved off of the ferry and onto 5 cargo bikes to start, and then they're going to customers. And it's been a success so far. It's been less than a week, but all things are good. And now I will pass it back to Catherine to talk about consolidation.
Thanks so much, Carrie. So next slide. So I'll just briefly go over our microhubs pilot program. So as I mentioned earlier, we had, a couple various planning and policy and rulemaking changes to allow for this to happen. Our pilot is testing this strategy, which is moving goods from a truck to a sustainable last mile mode. So this could be a cargo bike, a hand cart, a human-powered hand cart to a small electric vehicle. So we're testing this in the public right of way, but through the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity Zoning Amendment, we are also able to support kind of outside of our pilot adoption of this strategy on privately managed spaces. And so, we're excited to kind of see this strategy happening in ways that are hopefully safer in the long run. Next slide. So within our pilot, we're looking at both off-street in sort of city parking lots and then on-street, like curbside. And I think the on-street has gotten the most like we've been able to start with, and has certainly gotten a lot of excitement because it's really trying to provide a safe place to address that sort of existing activity of parcel sorting in the middle of the street. Um, and so we were able to implement our first 3 sites on the Upper West Side in conjunction with our Smart Curbs program, which was looking to really um, rethink how curb space is allocated as opposed to for car storage in the city. And we, are looking to continue to expand, and we have a few more sites that we hope to bring on board in Manhattan in the next early like next year, and then we'll be opening up the program hopefully even more to more locations. Next slide. And just like just an overview of our goals, this is really about supporting um, our environmental goals as a city, as well as our safety goals for the public, as well as for the workers involved. But also trying to see if by giving a dedicated curb space or a dedicated off-street parking lot space, if that could assist with operational efficiency. So those are our goals. Next slide. And, as I mentioned, we're really, we're just at the start. This is quite a novel approach. There's not a lot of places in the US that have done this, and certainly not a lot of places that have tried to do this in a way that isn't heavily subsidized. And so so it's very much a learning curve at this moment, and we're looking to continue to collect data, continue to keep trying this out, learning as we go, and hopefully we'll be able to have some really good findings and like information that we can share at the end of the pilot. So we'll be starting off our phase 2, which will be more expansive this April. Next slide. And I'll pass it over to Jack.
Thanks, Catherine. So I will be going over LockerNYC, which is a pilot program that provides New Yorkers with 24/7 access to shared use delivery lockers, where they can pick up or drop off packages. The program's free for during the duration of the pilot. And this was something that was identified in the comprehensive freight plan as a strategy to, one, reduce truck traffic by consolidating deliveries, but two, reduce package theft by providing secure points for pickup and drop off. And so, just the timeline on this, DOT issued the RFEI in 2021 to solicit participation. We selected a first vendor, GoLocker, and the pilot launched in April 2024. And then in October of this year, we recently onboarded a second vendor, Quadient, who installed their first locations just, I think, last month. And one thing I'll note here is these vendors use two different delivery models with their lockers. So GoLocker will consolidate packages at a central warehouse and carry out deliveries to the lockers, while Quadient will allow package carriers to drop their packages directly into the lockers. So UPS and FedEx and anyone else can directly access the Quadient lockers. Next slide, please. And to give you an idea of kind of the workflow and structure of this program, so vendors will handle all of the siting and installation of lockers. They're responsible for scouting potential locations, entering into contract agreements with property owners. DOT's role in this process is really to review these proposed locations to ensure that they comply with siting criteria and maintain adequate pedestrian space on the sidewalk, and make sure that there are no conflicts of any sort that could arise due to the placement of the locker. Similarly, all operations and maintenance are handled by vendors. They regularly conduct checks on lockers to make sure there's no graffiti, no accumulation of litter or snow. Um, and they also report data to us on a regular basis to give us an idea of how these lockers are being used, how many packages are going through them, the time of day pickups and drop-offs are occurring, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. And so this is just an overview of the siting criteria that we have in mind when a location is proposed to us. Basically just ensuring that there's enough space for pedestrians, making sure that there are no potential conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles or other sidewalk infrastructure. Uh, Proposed locations are usually in compliance with this. We've very rarely had to flag a location that seems like there could be some sort of conflict or it would be otherwise not ideal for a locker. And one thing I will note here is that each locker comes equipped with lighting elements for pedestrian safety at night and security cameras. So these are, you know, secure and really trying to emphasize pedestrian safety on the sidewalk while these lockers are there. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, as of right now, there are 75 lockers installed throughout the city. The vast majority do belong to GoLocker. They had a year head start or so, but Quadient, we hope, catches up. And this program's been growing pretty regularly. We usually see a spike in user signups and reservations around the holiday seasons. So it will be interesting to get this last batch of data for the month of December. And there's also a lot of inquiries from people who live in areas that aren't close to a locker, which indicates, there's interest in expanding this to other areas of New York City. Right now, it's primarily concentrated, or the network is primarily concentrated in Brooklyn. But there's interest, and it's likely that it will expand as it continues. And next slide, please. And so, the next steps are really to, make sure these lockers, keep going in. We are currently finalizing evaluation criteria to put together an evaluation report, looking at, if it's possible to determine how many, vehicle miles traveled were reduced by lockers, other relevant statistics and indicators. And then, yeah, so that we will put those things together, draft a final evaluation report, and then take things from there. And that's all from me. So I think I pass it on to, oh, and yeah, here are some just photos of different lockers throughout the city. So you can see they, maintain a relatively uniform aesthetic and are located right up against walls with enough room on the sidewalk for people to pass. And yeah, that's it for me. So I'll pass it on to Katrina, I think.
Thanks, Jack. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk more about some of the curb access strategies that we have in our toolkit. First up, I'm going to talk about our neighborhood loading zone program. The goal, this is a regulation that we have throughout the city. The goal being that we want to make sure that we're allowing access along the curb for residential deliveries, specifically because of that rise in e-commerce that we've been talking about throughout this presentation. The idea is that we could carve out some space on residential streets, particularly in more narrow and infrastructure heavy like areas with bike lanes, bus lanes, etc., to allow for trucks to be able to pull in and use the curb space and cut down on double parking and loading in the bike lanes or bus lanes throughout the city. Next slide. The program first started as a pilot in 2019. Again, the idea is that we could carve out some access for package deliveries to residences, but also allow for other types of pickup and drop-off activities, such as with taxis and for hire vehicles, since that is also an activity that's been rising in the city as well. And you can also use this space to load and unload personal vehicles too. Since we've launched the neighborhood loading zone program, we have since expanded to 950-ish locations throughout the city. It's in all 5 boroughs. And we've also introduced new signage for clearer messaging. At first, which you'll see on the next slide, it was a blue pedestrian level sign, but now we have a new sign standard available. We also have conducted a study that showed that the introduction of a neighborhood loading zone could result in up to a 70% reduction in double parking when implemented. Next slide. Just to go over some placement and criteria for neighborhood loading zones, we try to target areas with denser residential land uses. So those residential buildings with over 15 units is typical for us, especially because those are the types of buildings that you're going to see a lot more package delivery and activity at. We also want to focus in on areas with, again, some of the infrastructure like bike lanes and bus lanes and narrower streets. So those areas that are going to see more conflicts if you have double parking type behavior for loading and unloading activity. Typically, we have about a space to 2 for delivery vehicles to pull into the space, and passenger vehicles as well are able to get into the space. And again, it's designated by this red signage. Now down at the bottom, it says loading only. Typically, they're in effect from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week. But in special cases, we do implement different hours depending on the demand and context of the area. Next slide. I'm going to switch over a bit to talk about the off-hour delivery program in New York City. This is just another tool that we have in our toolkit. a little bit about the history of off-hour deliveries. It's been around for some time. It started between 2007 to 2010 as a pilot, as a voluntary program that included 25 receivers and 8 transporters, and it was focused in Manhattan. The idea of off-hour deliveries is to encourage businesses to switch from making their deliveries at the peak hours of the day when traffic is the heaviest and more delivery activity is happening, take that and move it to the off-peak hours. So in this case, 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. The idea being that this can help reduce congestion, reduce delivery times, and give you greater access to the curb. Again, this is a voluntary program. It is to this day, and we have a variety of goals to try to get more businesses involved in the program. Right now, we have over 1,000 locations that are actively participating in off-hour deliveries throughout several different industries, and our goal now is to reach 5,000 locations throughout the city by 2040. And that goal was set in 2021. Our role as DOT in this program is more of a technical and support role. We offer resources for businesses that may need help shifting some of their deliveries off hours. We also help with curb management strategies where feasible, and we can help with matchmaking between receivers and transporters. Next slide. This is just an example of some of our active OHD partners throughout the city. Again, we have a variety of different industries represented that are actively running some portion of their deliveries off hour, but the biggest share is definitely the food and beverage industry. They just generally have an easier time making that shift off hours. Next slide. Some of the benefits of off-hour deliveries, it's seen with transporters, receivers, and the community as well. Some of the transporter benefits are that deliveries tend to be more efficient when you are delivering in the less congested parts of the day. So you can get to multiple of your destinations quicker, and there's less time idling in traffic, which can lead to reduced transit time and more efficient fuel costs. And again, we've talked about this before, but less parking headaches with less demand as there is during the day. You can also see more predictable delivery windows, improved truck utilization, and reduced delivery costs as well. Some of the receiver benefits is that goods can be delivered outside of store hours, so there's less busyness to deal with when your stores are open. You can also have more certainty on arrival times with less congestion and also reduce delivery costs. Community benefits, less congestion, less traffic. We all love that. Cleaner air with less truck idling. Safer streets, less contact with pedestrians and vulnerable road users is something that we would like to see more of, and there's less conflict than during the day. And then also an improved neighborhood aesthetic, just seeing less truck activity during the day. Next slide. Off-hour deliveries is not a one-size-fits-all. Again, it's voluntary, and it's not the best fit for every single business. There are some common barriers and challenges for switching deliveries from typical hours to off-peak. For receivers, that could be that landlords have lease restrictions that don't allow for off-hour deliveries or deliveries overnight. Receivers tend to have a strong influence over how deliveries are made. We also hear a lot that there's a lack of financial incentives. We hear that from receivers and transporters, which I'll get into in the next slide. And you may need to hire more staff to work off hours. For transporters, not receivers determine when they will receive their deliveries, so that relationship between receivers and transporters is very important to maintain, and there needs to be a level of trust between the transporters and receivers. We've also found that unattended deliveries, meaning that a receiver or a transporter will drop off the deliveries with no staff or limited staff at the destination. There needs to be, again, a level of trust established between those partners. And then there is a lack of carrier-centered incentives. Some of the challenges for the community. Noise is a big concern for the community, especially if you're adjacent to residences. There isn't a noise ordinance that is clear for the times of day that you need to reduce your noise, but there is a stipulation that states that you should make reasonable noise during the off hours, and sometimes that can cause conflict with residents. And that could also feed into a local perception that off-hour deliveries may not be positive for the community, and those effects of shifting to off-hour deliveries are often not felt as directly by residents. Next slide. So how can we help with some of these barriers? In 2024, we have launched our incentives program. So the goal of our incentives program is to address some of those common barriers for receivers and transporters and offer a monetary incentive to businesses to help ease that transition to the off hour. Anyone who is a business that delivers or receives goods is eligible to apply. And again, these monetary incentives will be issued one time to these businesses to purchase things that may help aid in that transition, like access enhancement, security equipment, low noise handling equipment. And we also offer the chance to purchase green delivery modes as well. You can operate anywhere throughout the city, but there is a focus on the more congested parts of the city, such as Lower Manhattan, downtown Brooklyn, Flushing, in Queens, and Jamaica, Queens. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I will pass it over to Demel.
Thanks, Katrina. So last but not least, this part will be short and sweet. I am the anchor. So I just wanted to just kind of just share a little bit about our Truck Smart Safety Awareness Campaign, which has recently relaunched. So though all of our work as a team is driven by needs for safety, we also feel the need to educate our truck operator population and kind of meet them where they are and get them those safety messages as well. So originally launched back in 2022. Our Truck Smart campaign, which was spearheaded by a safety guide for truck operators to kind of like absorb and read through, is now relaunching in 2025. So driven by the need to protect our most vulnerable roadway users, our pedestrians and cyclists in the traffic environment. Obviously, like we want to reduce fatal crashes and serious injuries, but also promote safe driving behaviors um, amongst our commercial vehicle operators. And all of this aligned with the city's goals and supports the city's goals for safer streets under the Vision Zero initiative as we work uh, both with the public and private sector to kind of create a more harmonious roadway environment. With that said, some of the themes of our Truck Smart program you will see us promoting safe turning behaviors. So asking our operators to reduce speeds as they turn, be aware of cyclists and to keep safe distance from them while in the roadway environment, but also be extra cautious to the obstructive vision areas around the truck. So blind spot awareness um, for our truck operators. Um, as well as a newer kind of emphasis for us as far as the Truck Smart campaign is concerned is our Bridge Strike Awareness campaign, where we encourage our operators to stay off of our parkways, be aware of our low clearance infrastructure, um, as well as low clearance infrastructure on the at the local street level, which here in the city is our elevated subway structures. So what you'll see again, is we have social media ads, social media campaigns. So please, if you see them on your LinkedIn or your social media apps, be sure to click in and tell us what you think. We have some running radio ads, and of course, as pictured here, we have a few billboards around the city and the surrounding area. One of which is in New Jersey, which is just north of the Goethals Bridge. So if you're ever in that area, just you know take a peek up and kind of just help us spread the safety awareness uh, news to the truck populations throughout the region. And then just the last slide. Again, we wanted to put an emphasis on bridge strikes, which is a serious crash incident issue here, mostly along our city's parkways, but we do also experience this type of crash incident on out at the local street level as well. Um, So again, just really you know, pushing the message that these that non-compliant behaviors can result in really bad disruptions to the traffic network. Um, so we are hoping to just, let our truck operators know that size does matter and you should know your truck's height before before you take off from the various workstations and go out to do great work throughout the city. Um, and that is it. I promised to be short, and I stayed on time.
All right. I want to thank everybody for that. I had no idea there was this much going on in this space. Um, I'm going to hand it over to Jacob to handle the Q&A. I see you've got several questions in the chat box. So with that, Jacob, I'm handing it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. So, Carrie, I see you already answered this one in the chat, but I'll ask it anyway for the benefit of those that are not paying attention to the chat box. So the first question is there training and or certification required to operate a cargo bike? Do the operators carry insurance? And finally, how is the safety record for the cargo bikes?
Okay, so as of now, the traffic law does require that commercial cyclists take a training before they start operating. So more broadly, cargo cyclists fall under that, so they have to take that training. We would like to tack on to that with our safety guide, the safety guide for cargo cyclists. So we'll update the material and have like a more cargo specific training that's also required. Um, Operators usually carry insurance. We don't require it specifically, but it's a business, so they're likely to, want to protect their goods and the vehicle or the bike. And then for the safety record for cargo bikes, so cargo bikes actually don't tend to get in too many accidents or crashes, whichever word we like to use in the industry. Um, or like, they're not the primary like the one crashing into people. There are a few that have gotten hit by cars, but the business model, like there's not delivery, like some delivery cyclists are expected to deliver as fast as possible, but with this business model, they tend to have pre-planned deliveries that are, and they're paid hourly, so they're not like going at this extra fast rate. Plus, a lot of them are throttled at 12 miles per hour. So they just are actually kind of like slow and big and noticeable. So it's not really actually, they don't have a lot of safety issues, or we haven't noticed too many. I'll leave it at that.
Right. Thank you. Next question. Regarding the LockerNYC pilot program, has any notable issue arisen with the program thus far?
I'd say, the program's been functioning very well. I'd say one challenge is just the realities of geographic and geometric constraints. Most of the lockers are in Brooklyn, because in Manhattan it's very difficult to find enough space for a locker to go on a sidewalk while maintaining, adequate pedestrian right of way. Similarly, as you go further out into Queens, areas become more residential, so the need for lockers is not as pronounced there, or people drive more, so they won't be walking to a locker location. But apart from those constraints, it's been functioning very well. In terms of the safety element, there was only one reported attempted break into a locker last year, and it was actually unsuccessful. So we do see this functioning very well and as intended.
Is there any, I guess, relationship or any kind of with Amazon lockers?
No relationship with Amazon lockers.
Okay.
Yes.
So they work basically, independently of one another.
Yes. So
Okay.
Amazon has their own lockers in the city. Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess, Jack, like another piece is that they're like company agnostic. So these lockers like receive and like either we'll take returns from or we'll be getting deliveries. So like basically when you go to put in for whatever your order is, you're just putting the locker address in as opposed instead of your home address. So it allows for a wider it's not, yeah, it's company agnostic in their model.
So I guess in other words, you could receive an Amazon delivery in a LockerNYC. Yes. Okay. All right. Next question. The neighborhood loading zones I've seen have mostly been occupied all day by cars with permits. Has DOT been able to make observations about how effective they are in practice?
That's a great question. And I did see another related question about neighborhood loading zones in the chat, so maybe I can answer both at the same time. Yes, hear you on enforcement and compliance. I think that is a challenge for a lot of neighborhood loading zones are just one of the many loading type regulations that we have throughout the city that have sort of the same challenge of compliance with the regulation. We have talked to NYPD before for targeted enforcement and general awareness of the loading zones to raise education about what they're used for and hopefully help with that compliance level. We have seen mixed reviews. Some areas work better than others. And the regulation itself does allow for handicap permits, but does not allow for technically other types of permits throughout the city. And placard abuse problem is something that the city is just a general challenge overall for curb management. So it's something that we as an agency are actively trying to find better strategies for. But yes, hear you on that. And I guess one thing to add is we have done some level of monitoring these loading zones and trying to find and pick up on some quantitative data. We had put out a study in 2022 to measure the utilization of neighborhood loading zones and the effectiveness. That's where you found the up to 70% compliance and cut down on double parking. So there is some level of utility that we have found. It doesn't work all the time, and we want to work better on just making them better and more compliant.
Yeah, thank you. And like you said, that takes care of another question on the same topic. Next question, has there been a spike in interest for off-hour delivery with congestion pricing now in place?
Great question. Yeah, there has. There has been definite increase in interest, not only as a strategy that sort of speaks to the introduction of congestion pricing at the agency level, but at the business level as well. It's sort of a built-in incentives for businesses. It's cheaper to deliver off-peak, even more so now that congestion pricing is in place. So we have seen some level of interest rise since congestion pricing.
Okay. I think that's all the questions in the chat, but I have a couple. On microhubs, how did you identify the locations? And also, I noticed they're mostly outdoors. So what happens on a day like yesterday when there's snow? Are they kind of like weather dependent type locations? And did you observe some of this activity already kind of happening in the vicinity of one of these spots, and you decided to kind of make it more formal? What was kind of the process of finding
Yeah.
the right spots?
So citing has been really challenging. I mean, obviously, like the industry would prefer indoor, for those conditions with weather. But they're already, folks are already doing deliveries outdoors, and so having dedicated curb space is useful. Um, and we had to work within the constraints of what we could do as a city with this pilot. We don't control private spaces, and we weren't in a position to subsidize a private space like some other cities have done with partners. So, we really looked at understanding, like we kind of set a broad-based criteria on the density levels and sort of land use types that we thought made sense, looking at commercial corridors that were adjacent to um, mixed use, like high density neighborhoods, looking at proximity to our truck route network and our bike lane network, as well as public transportation for the workers themselves to get to the sites. So really trying to think about all those factors, and again, then also dealing with um, community, either supportive communities or unsupportive communities, and working through and negotiating those things, and the needs of the companies themselves, like where they were like wanting to do their deliveries. So it's been a very complex, siting has been one of the more complex aspects of this pilot. The first three we were able to implement was again like by partnering with a larger initiative to reprogram curb space. So we were able to kind of have buy-in from the community, and it just so happened that there was locations within that study zone that met our siting criteria, and so we were able to work together on that. And then we have a few more sites that will be coming on board that again were this combination of like meeting our kind of general criteria of like and this criteria about the density and the kind of roadway characteristics and proximities was developed out of our request for expressions of interest some years back, where companies themselves provide us with this information about like what it is that they usually look for and sort of in where they would want to site this activity. And so really trying to think, use that perspective and then meet that with sort of the realities of what's happening on the curb, and making sure that we're not that we're doing this in a location that works for that's the general support of the community and that works for the businesses that might be needing that curb space. So like ensuring we're not taking away, say, because these are dedicated curb spaces, we're not taking away space that would be vital for a business's operations, be that customer parking or their own deliveries. So it is quite complicated, and then we have a few parking lots, but again, the parking lots have like minimal amenities, and so it's very hard. It's been a process to try to help bring some of those amenities like electricity into those areas to support their usage as microhubs, but it's been definitely a process and an uphill battle with a lot of learning along the way.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, no other questions in the chat, but if anybody would like to unmute yourself, if you prefer not to type. Uh, okay, Jeff, you're up.
Yeah, thanks. On the, sort of the pilot community deliveries, the parking. I know you're trying to focus on locations with high density residential and narrow streets. Um, are you seeing interest from sort of the more, there are some single family or two family communities, neighborhoods in New York City, like Eastern Queens, and for example, and then how are you determining, or if you determine the difference between where adult parking is maybe a nuisance or a minor nuisance, where the dwell times are a minute or two versus a more, where you really are interrupting traffic flow that is actually poses a safety concern. And that's my first question. Second question, I'll just get it all in there, is in terms of citing, you mentioned the challenge there. Is there any, I mean, do you look at, like, let's say, is there opportunities for NYCHA properties and maybe citing some of these, public housing properties?
So I'll start, and then Katrina, if you want to speak to maybe like the neighborhood loading zone angle, and I can. So for so I guess like more broadly, like I think especially when it comes to like a microhub sort of typology, this is where like that transloading piece is not only is it dangerous, but that's causing a lot of congestion. And usually the worse the transloading like activity is going to be like when there's a lot of packages because it's a high rise that has like a large like a population that's ordering a lot. And this also happens to often coincide with like if you have the expendable income to order a lot of packages. So like there are these kind of factors that come into play in terms of where we're seeing the kind of most egregious issues with trucks unloading packages in the right of way. And that's often where we're trying to like shift that activity to in a safer direction. And so a less dense part of the city is not going to create that kind of blockage and also that kind of long-term sort of utilization of space. And so it's not as not only is it like not as big of an issue, in terms of that particular aspect, but also the delivery demand isn't as strong to kind of try out this like a new program like this. And in terms of the neighborhood loading zone angle, I'll pass that over to Katrina.
Yeah, I think there's a similarity between the points that Catherine just made in neighborhood loading zones. When we're citing these, we do tend to try to target areas where double parking is causing those congestion and double parking type behaviors that affect, yeah, again, congestion, but also safety, with cars having to maneuver around the trucks trying to make their deliveries, or cars waiting to pick up someone at their home. But and like we're sort of like able to differentiate between when double parking is causing those types of issues, typically on narrower corridors or corridors with bike lanes or bus lanes where those conflicts can come into play. And with single family homes, we haven't seen much of an interest, and that could just be because the volume of deliveries and pickup and drop off activity just tends to be lower in those contexts.
Right,
Well, thanks.
thank you. Anybody else? All right, then I will ask another question. Uh, uh, so just to follow up on what Karen, what you were talking about with the cargo bikes. So they're sharing the bike lanes, right? Is there any kind of enforcement on speed limits or anything like that? I know you said that the interaction has been safe thus far, but uh, is there anything kind of proactively being done to kind of make sure they're not, going too fast? And what's been the reception of the regular bikes that are in those bike lanes?
So, um, when we legalized cargo bikes to operate in New York City, we made a 15 mile per hour speed limit for them. However, a lot of companies, or like some of the bigger ones that have larger fleets, chose to throttle at 12 miles an hour anyway because they're so interested in safety. And then also now all bikes are supposed to only go 15 miles per hour. So that's, I don't know how that impacts the cargo bikes exactly, but um the main feedback has really been, oh, this big, slow bike is in front of me and in my way. If not the main feedback, but like the negative feedback that's coming from cyclists, that's kind of the direction of the feedback.
So it's actually the cargo bikes are kind of enforcing slower biking
Right.
in an unofficial way.
Okay. Um, and I still don't see any other questions or any hands up. So I'll ask another one if I can. On the Blue Highway, you mentioned that you were looking for potential sites on our side of the water. Uh, what kinds of are you looking for existing businesses that are located on the waterfront? Are you looking for vacant parcels that can be kind of, turned into these transload type locations? Do you have any kind of like a anything in mind, like specifically that maybe, we can kind of start to, screen some parcels on the water side here in northern New Jersey to see what may work.
So the way that we're approaching this is sort of, encouraging businesses to use or create routes with landings that, where we're activating certain landings, but we're not actually operating the routes ourselves.
Mhm.
So on the Jersey side, if you have, I mean, businesses are hard to come by, to be honest. So, like, if there's a business that's on the waterfront that's interested, and maybe it's not that hard to upgrade the waterfront landing, or maybe it is and they have enough money to do it. I think that's really interesting to us. We wouldn't, I mean, if there's a vacant l- landing, waterfront landing, that could work as long as we, like, uh, the city and you can like find a business that would use it.
Uh,
I think,
And
Carrie, this is a TPA should circle back with you and have a conversation about this. So.
Yeah, I also wanted to flag because there is a fair amount of ferry traffic between New Jersey and New York City. And we are in the pilot, we are utilizing like some passenger ferry vehicles that have like that we've been where we've been able to allow get the regulations so that they could carry goods. So just putting that out there too as something to think about is as a potential.
I agree. And just one kind of, I guess, follow up. And I think, Carrie, you spoke at that meeting. It was like a year and a half ago here on Blue Highways. And back then, UPS was looking at moving trailers across from Bayonne to Brooklyn, I believe. Has anything moved with that?
In terms of the models that we're pursuing as of now, like this ferry to micromobility model is sort of a priority. Um, in terms of UPS's involvement, I think that's kind of at least backburnered at this point. So we're kind of paused there. The other models are container freight, should be a trailer, and aggregate. So it's not like we're completely ignoring these other service lines, is what we're calling them. But as of now, what we're trying to facilitate in the very near term is more like the ferry to micromobility model.
Okay,
Jacob?
thank you. I have a hand raised. Liza, please.
Hi. I've got a quick question about ferries carrying a potential cargo that is existing right now. I'm just wondering if in the long run, the carrying of freight could help subsidize the cost of the ferry operation because some airlines actually make money on carrying cargo that subsidizes their passenger load. And could this possibly be a model for, the transportation of people and goods across the Hudson River?
We love that model. But there's as of now, I said that there was one pilot operating, and that boat that they're using got the proper Coast Guard certification for passenger and freight simultaneously. Um, so I guess there's like that hoop to get through, and they are choosing to not do passenger services with that. They're just having one of the transporters of the goods count as the passenger. I know that's not really answering your question, but like that's just kind of where we're at right now with like using the ferry for both at the same time.
Mhm.
And well, I know there was some talk a while ago, Carrie, about like kind of a off-peak delivery model potentially with the ferries. Is that still being talked about?
We're really talking about anything and everything, but off hours delivery would probably be our number one preference. I think it's a really good model for, say, delivering goods to restaurants at very specific times. Um, yeah, like overnight and then bringing like whichever locations want a delivery at 4 a.m., right? It's some.
All right. So I don't
I,
see any other questions. Commissioner, you have one?
no, I don't. I was actually going to say,
Okay. All right.
I think we're good, and
Yep.
I want to thank everybody I want to thank you all for joining us. Very interesting discussion there. Like I said before, I didn't know there was so much going on in this space, but we all see the packages mounting, especially this time of year. So once again, thank you all very much.